as a dentist, the amount of money that you're going to have go through your hands in your lifetime is astronomical. It's not, are you going to make a good living? It's just, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Are you going to take care of it? Are you going to treat people right? Are you going to do things the right way? And for me, that's really what's important to me.
Welcome to Dental Momentum, the podcast dedicated to lively discussions on business and financial strategies tailored for dental business owners. At Duckett Ladd, we're committed to transforming your business journey and supporting you at every stage. Join us as we delve into the keys to long-term practice success, from cutting-edge accounting and strategic tax planning to personalized business strategies. Together, let's propel your dental practice forward with unstoppable momentum.
What's happening, buddy? Another fun conversation, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Good friend of the firm, Dr. Ed Hood, Hood Dental Care down in the Baton Rouge area, Denham Springs, in that area. What a great story. Dude, there's some tidbits in there I had no idea about. We know Ed a long time, but I never heard some of his, some things he had to go through.
I'm telling you, that story you guys dives into, midway through, called A Little Setback. But I'm telling you what, I mean, he gritted his teeth and got through it, and I would probably say it made him better.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Made him better and grew faster as a result of what he went through. So super story. But just a guy who's accomplished a lot in his career.
Yeah, you bet. I think the power of perseverance, grit, and then also the understanding of surrounding yourself with good people and good coaching and trying to shorten your learning curve as much as you can. I mean, a lot of great tidbits for a guy who's building a really awesome group practice down in Louisiana.
100%. So you guys are going to enjoy this conversation with just a great individual, Dr. Ed Hood, with Hood Dental Care. Enjoy, guys. Hey, Dr. Hood, how you doing?
Doing great, Jared.
I appreciate you jumping on here and having a conversation. We'll kind of date this a little bit, man. My belly's full of turkey after that Thanksgiving weekend, so everybody's got a little turkey hangover. But I appreciate you jumping on.
No, I'm happy to do it. I appreciate the relationship I've had with you guys, and it's meant a lot to me, and certainly has helped propel my career. So happy to do it.
Yeah, and I just say, I mean, you're just one of the nicest, humblest guys, I think we've met, and just a friend of the firm, and got to know you over the past couple of years. When we started, thinking about this episode series of group dental practice owners, and unpacking the journey, you came top of mind. Like, man, we got to get Ed on here. Got to talk through his journey. How he got to where he is.
I'm not sure if that's good or bad.
Oh, it's good.
Well, I'll jump in there, Jared, and I'll say, having worked with Ed for some few years now, or a year, I think that there's just people that are really good operators and hire a really good team, and they know what to look for, they know what to manage. It's fun to watch when you have someone who is really good at ops, and then you kind of couple some financial data and some clarity there. You see the decisions become very clear. But Ed, knowing that, like I said on our pre-show, that entrepreneurship is not a straight journey. It wasn't always that way.
No.
There was probably some bumps. Maybe we just jump in, Ed, and start us with your story, man. Just walk us through kind of what led you to dentistry, and the early part of your journey. We'll just kind of pepper some questions here as we go.
Yeah, I mean, for me, dentistry was never. There's no dentist in my family. My dad worked at a plant. No real mentors in my life that were dentists. It's just one of those things that I actually pre-registered at LSU in chemical engineering, and changed my mind before I got home that day, and decided that I wanted to go into dentistry. Really felt like it was almost a calling to me. I felt like that was the thing that I should do. Went through school, enjoyed my 4 years at LSU in undergrad, as well as the 4 years at dental school. And so I'm a Tiger at heart. Go Tigers, as Coach O would say. But my years at school, got out, was an associate in office here in my hometown, Denham Springs, where I grew up. Was there for 5 years and was literally dying on the vine. I mean, I built my first office as a little 3-op office. I got turned down by 3 banks back in finished in 85, so this was 1990. things, the economy, similar to kind of where we are now, only probably a lot worse. I got my first loan. Did have a bank that took a chance, and I was super excited to have it. It was 13% interest at the time, and so people are freaking out now about 6 and 7. I'm like, man, that sounds pretty good. Get some perspective,
right?
Yeah, get some perspective. But anyway, started my career, didn't really know what I was doing. After 5 years as an associate, like I said, it wasn't doing much at all, and so started and just crawled. Got coaching after probably a couple of years into my practice in that little 3-op office. Stayed there for like 12 years, built an 8-op practice down the street. It was kind of my dream office. 2007, got my first associate with me. We were doing fine. I thought everything was great in that 8-op practice. We were probably, at the time, going to do around $3 million, I guess, the two of us together. And my son decided
this is practice number 2. You said?
Well, no, this is just the second building, but that
second iteration of the first,
yeah,
right? Okay.
Yeah. So I kept my first office and have had it as a rental for all these years, and actually we just took it back over last year as my management office. So we have some administrative stuff that we do out of it, but at the time that was not really part of the plan at all. I just had grown. Literally did a little over $1 million the last year that we were in that 3-op office, and it was the most stressful $1 million I ever produced in my life, because we would numb up a patient, put them in the waiting room, bring another one back, numb them up. I had a hygienist.
Take them back out to the car, let them sit in the car.
It's like, so just trying to figure out how to do that. So when I moved into an 8-op office, thought, man, this is a dream. And my son decided to go to dental school, and so 2012 he graduated from dental school. Still had just a one location, and basically came in, and the three of us together, we added on to the office. I tell my son it cost me $1 million to add on. So I said, Dr. Moore and I were doing just fine until you decided to be a dentist. So, but having a family business, and like I said, my oldest son's a dentist, my daughter's a hygienist, middle son's an entrepreneur, and he's helped do a lot of the construction stuff that we've done. So it's been a pretty cool journey having them really as not only your kids, but as peers too. It's a weird dynamic. Let
me jump in there real fast if you don't mind. Go back to when you were an associate for 5 years. What made you jump off? Like you said, it was dying on the vine. Were you bored? Yeah. Were you like, what was it?
I just wasn't productive at all. I was in a situation with an older doc, greatest guy, give you the shirt off his back, and he had just gotten, they changed all the real estate laws in '86. And he had a ton of real estate, had a bunch of people that he was in partnership with that jumped out of that real estate and left him holding the bag in some of those partnerships. Mm-hmm. And so he thought he was going to be cutting back, moving away from the chair some, and it didn't happen because he was in all kind of really lawsuits based off of the real estate ventures that he was in, and people getting out, the banks really holding him accountable to pay the whole note. So it was a really tough time for him. And so things just didn't work out like, we hoped it would. And so I just wasn't busy. And so I moved out because it was, I didn't really have any options. It wasn't because, man, I've grown to a point now I can kind of go do it on my own. It was basically a startup that, was trying to make it every month just to be able to pay the note. But
do you remember the amount of that note? You said 13% interest. Just curious, how much in 1990 did it cost?
It was probably
to jump out?
on $100,000 loan, something like that.
Times have changed, right?
No, I said I had, it was a small 1,700 square foot office, but I had a brother-in-law that was an electrician, one that was a civil engineer, and another one that was a plumber. So I got a lot of the trades.
Brother-in-laws, man.
Yeah, we traded off. I just paid for the materials, and I've done their dental work forever. Yeah. But so it was I got it done as cheap as you could potentially get it done, and still got turned down by 3 banks for that. But anyway, like I said, that journey, once Andrew came on, we started really to grow, and I joined forces with a consulting group at that time. I'd had Wendy Briggs come in as far as a hygiene coach, and team training was the group that I have used for the last really 10, 12 years. And so not really having that second location as any kind of a, that's a target. This is what I want to do. I want to try to, have multiple locations. That was never on the radar. It really was just trying to maximize what I had. And so 3 doctors in one office, because Dr. Moore was still with me, growing, just the logistical nightmare of chaos every day. So we developed a lot of systems through them, basically got things where I felt like on the business side, we were running a pretty good operation. We were productive. One of the things that I did was a vision day where I pretty much sat down and we kind of laid out the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan.
Yep.
Kind of a EOS deal, and basically had some clarity about what we wanted to do. But what I didn't know at the time was we were super productive, but I was not profitable at all. I think at the time, probably, and it was just an estimate because my books were so bad. Everything was commingled together because it was a typical mom and pop type business. You pay all the bills and whatever's left, that's what you live on. And so it was, those learning experiences for me. But I think the best estimate was probably 4, 5, 6%, profit was all it was. And we were, at the time, we were probably 3.5 million, somewhere in there. And so we got better. We made a lot of changes to really become more efficient, more profitable. And then that went along for really 1.5 years or so, because we joined them in 2014. But in 2016, in the Baton Rouge area, we had a weather event. Wasn't a named storm, wasn't a hurricane, wasn't anything like that. It was just a 3-day rain event. We got 40 plus inches of rain in 3 days. And in Denham Springs, there's a Amite River runs through the middle, and I grew up on the river, and it had flooded 3 times in my lifetime, where the house that I grew up in, it basically got under the old frame house, but we had a boat tied up to the doorknob, it was, but we were good. It never affected the house. But this one was much different, and 1,000-year flood. So that river that was typically 30 yards wide at the height of the flood was 6 miles wide.
Oh my gosh.
So it flooded 90% of the houses in town and 90% of the businesses. So needless to say, my house I had 5.5 feet of water in my house, and I had 30 inches in my office. So at 13 since we had added on, was 13 operatories, ADEC equipment, ADEC cabinetry, Series 500 chairs, cone beam. I had 3 CEREC machines. I had 1 CEREC machine I hadn't made the first payment on. And so, when you go through a situation like that where you literally lose everything. I lost everything in my house, and I lost everything at my office. And I had flood insurance, had insurance, but flood insurance is different. And you think that you're covered for all this stuff. You have business interruption, you have all those things. You think, oh man, I'm probably going to be okay. Well, there's exclusions for business interruption. A flood excludes that. So no income. That was on August 12th, 2016. And we literally lost everything overnight. We were doing a software conversion at the time. We were moving to Dentrix Ascend from Eaglesoft, and we had the first day of training. We were supposed to have another day of training on Friday, and we were going live on Monday. And because all the information was being transferred, it wasn't completed yet, I had to stop that in the middle. My servers were on the floor in the office. I lost everything on my servers. So they were able to re-input back into the new servers that information that they were trying to transfer. But it was a nightmare. I mean, you can imagine, go to bed at night, it's raining, you wake up the next day, you can't get to the office, and by the end of the weekend, you've lost everything.
Oh, man.
I literally had everything that I owned in the back of my truck. I had a new tractor, being a country boy. I had just bought a tractor, and I literally went out of my driveway with my 89-year-old dad and my wife, her car in tow, and drove down the driveway, and the water was at the level of my headlights.
Oh, man.
And had to drive down the street about 200 yards, try not to get out of the middle of the road because you knew it was going to flood out. Cars on the side trying to get you to stop and help them because they had flooded out. It was like, if you stop, you're going to be in the same situation. So, but by the end of that day, that flood, we had changed locations 2 or 3 times. Wound up with one of my best friends, stayed there for 3 weeks, lived with my mother-in-law for 11 weeks in the upstairs of her house because it flooded as well. Wound up moving a trailer in my dad's house. We had to tear it down, haul it off. It had 4.5 feet of water in that old frame house. It literally moved it off the piers.
How long did it take the water to go down? I mean, that's a ton of water.
Yeah, probably by Tuesday, Wednesday the next week, you can get into, back to the office and stuff. But then it's just the aftermath. It's gutting out sheetrock, all the things that go with it. So, if you want to know what $1.5 million worth of equipment looks like piled up on the road, waiting for the garbage truck to come get it.
Yeah,
I can show you the pictures, but everything at home, out on the road, everybody's house. Everybody's doing the same thing. So trying to find contractors. So all the people in North Carolina, all the flooding, it's just like PTSD. You know what that feels like. So
real quick, Ed, how many team members did you have at that point?
I had 27, I think.
Oh,
I lost half of them. You could go to Baton Rouge, which is, in that direction, 10 miles from my office, and everything was fine. So those dentists were, they were still up and running. And so I lost a lot of staff, all the training, all the, years that you'd put into developing that team. So I lost half of them overnight.
You lost the team. You lost half the team because they went to Baton Rouge to work because they needed to work, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because it's like I could pay them to come help muck out sheetrock and the things that we were doing.
But you weren't doing dentistry, yeah.
So from August till really December, and it was January before we had any equipment back in my main office. So it was 4 months.
Holy cow!
I had a guy that had a friend that had a contract, knew somebody that had a contract with the National Guard that. They have 18-wheelers rigged out, and they would go this after the Gulf War. They made sure that they were keeping up with the dental needs of the reservists, and so they had pretty much used up their budget for the year, even though the budget year wasn't over. And so they brought one of those trucks to my office. I had it in my parking lot, and we tried to do some cleanings and some stuff just to do any kind of dentistry, just to try to stay in contact with the patients. But, you don't have phones, you don't have computers. We went to rented some office space in Baton Rouge just to be able to have a place to kind of as a, ground center and a place to be able to work. Administrative team could work some and call patients and at least tell them what the story was. So most of them were dealing with the same thing, but a lot of them weren't. And
you had to be losing patients too, right? I mean, they needed dentistry done, and you couldn't perform, and they were going Baton Rouge, they're going elsewhere.
Yep. And so it was a tough deal. I won't lie. It's not, you're living out of a microwave on the second floor of a gutted out house.
Yeah.
Then we moved that trailer in. And lived with my dad there. So my 89-year-old dad moved him back. Probably took 6 or 8 weeks to get that set up. Maybe a little longer. Maybe might have lived with my mother-in-law almost 3 months. But it was 11 months before we got back into my house. But people ask you all the time, man, I don't know how you get through stuff like that. It's like you just wake up every day. You put your muck boots on.
Yeah.
And you just go to work and you just do what you can to get through it. So we lived eating out of a microwave, and because there wasn't any restaurants around either. They were all doing the same thing for at least the first couple of months.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, though. I mean, put yourself in the position of the entrepreneur because everything's on you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everything's in your name, the debt's in your name. You got to take care of, at this point, 13, 14 people after you've lost 13 or
Yep.
14. I mean, did it ever occur to you to just like say, man, well, it's not worth it? I mean, that had to have been some major mental ups and downs at that point.
Yeah, but most people are survivors. You just do what you need to do, and
Yeah.
it's it wasn't any fun going up to the office and mucking out. But it's like we got to put it back together. I don't whatever we have to do, one piece at a time. Like I said, we moved that trailer out. And the silver lining, like my dad was 89. Well, we lived with him for 11 months.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade that for anything because my son who lost his house and my other son who lost his house and my daughter, we were living in a trailer with my 89-year-old dad in a double wide. It's kind of down by the river, kind of like we could have wrote a song.
I thought you get the far-winding rivers you could get, man.
Yeah. So, but, those memories, you wouldn't trade them. Yeah. So my middle son actually wound up living with my dad for 4 years. He called him his roommate. So until he was 93, 94 years old. And so, those are things that he would never forget. He'll have those memories forever. But it was tough. But like I said, by January, I had bought 6 ops of equipment before the flood, thankfully. I had bought that Serac, which unthankfully we were actually putting to use, but hadn't made the first payment on it. So all you do is refinance all those loans that you have out and start over. So you're paying a note on all of that. Plus you got to refinance and, get a note on all new equipment. And so we put the office back together, those 6 ops that I had, that we were going to, had decided to open a second location in Watson up the road. And so we had that equipment kind of in a storehouse. That
didn't get ruined is what you're saying.
So that didn't get ruined. And
okay.
So we actually had access to some equipment probably ahead of what we normally would have been. So, there's a lot of blessings that you can find out of it. We had uploaded, to a server because we were changing our software, or we wouldn't have had anything. So we wound up losing all of our pictures, all of our x-rays. But we did have, the other data, the administrative data for all of our patient base. And so we were able to reach out once we got all that loaded back into computers. But if we hadn't been doing that, I'd have lost everything. I wouldn't have had any records even.
So how long did it take you? You get back in there January of 2017, I believe is what you said.
Yeah.
And get back getting at it. How long did it take for you to get like that office back to where it was?
So that office, that year we were on pace to do $5 million, and we wound up losing about 1.5 in opportunity that year. And it took the whole next year to get back up to the point where we were what we did that previous year. We pretty much repeated that. And so it took about 2 years to get back to that level in that office. But, we had planned to open a second location, and so we just decided to go ahead with it. It helped because my oldest son was a dentist, and that's who I was going to put in that location. But we opened that in August of 2017 as a startup. And 2018, I had a classmate that passed away and tragically, and went home and just literally fell dead. And we wound up buying his practice in Zachary. That was our third location acquisition in 2018. Getting new doctors, hiring new staff along the way, ahead of time, building capacity, ahead of that, having that demand. And so, I was in team training at the time. Dr. Meese had a CEO, had kind of started a CEO group, and him having been CEO at Mortensen Dental, or had worked with them for a long time, and so just learning, what's a good opportunity, what's not a good opportunity, contracts, all the things to kind of look out for. So all that time, I was still affiliated with them and learning, a whole lot But that, like I said, that second location really came about as we kind of had the first location at capacity. It's like, okay, if you can do it once, you can certainly either. I didn't really want to add on again. It's one of the things that I kind of had learned from him. He had added on to his office once, and then he added on a second time. And I asked him one time, if there's anything you would change, what would it be? And he said, the second addition, because you're drawing kind of from the same patient base. He said, I would have put that money into a second location and not added on a second time, because he got up to 24, 25 ops in that one office. He would have put that into another location, because the logistics of when the office gets that big, like my main mothership office is 13 ops. I think we have probably 34, 35 employees in that office. It just gets more complicated. It's harder to run.
And that mothership, is that the same office that flooded that back?
It is.
That you're talking about, 13 ops? Okay.
So we put it back together, and like I said, it's been kind of the anchor. We've added office in 2018 at acquisition, and then in 2000
that was your third in 18, right?
That was the third one, 18. Then 2020, I had bought property in Livingston to do which is a town about 15, 20 miles east of me. We had bought property to do a startup there. And so we went ahead and went through with all of that. I think it opened in probably March of 21. And then I had another, or maybe 20. That might have been March of 2020. No, that was COVID year. It had to be 21. Mm-hmm. I'm 65 now. I can't remember stuff. It all kind of runs together. But anyway, we opened did that as a startup. But like I said, all the doctors that we've had have come pretty much straight from school. We've mentored them. I've enjoyed doing that. My son helps out. He's kind of clinical director as well as being really a main producer. And but those are things you don't know that you're going to like or not like, because for me, I love clinical dentistry, and it was a hard transition for me because you can't do both. You get to a certain point. I think when I had 3 locations, I was still working probably 3 days a week. Then I cut back to maybe 1.5 day when I had that 4th location. You just have to continue to kind of cut time away from the chair. And that's the goal really was to initially, if I can't sell the practice, because even when Andrew came in, it was at a point where not many private buyers are going to come buy your practice. If you're doing 3 to 5 million, whatever your EBITDA is, it's like, okay, how as an individual going to buy that? It's not that they can't, but it's not that many of them out there. And so that pivot was really, how do I get the equity out of my practice? It's like, well, I can expand, can be a legacy model. I don't have to sell it. I wouldn't want to sell it out from under my son. And so when he decided to go into dentistry, my whole mindset shifted as far as what am I going to do long term? Because I love clinical dentistry. I don't want to get away from that. But I've also poured everything in my whole life into this practice. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of back and forth mentally, with that. And so it's like, well, if you've done it once, the next challenge for me, the next iteration was, can you reproduce yourself? And so, going from student to a technician, over your clinical career, you gain some mastery over those technical skills. Yeah. And then the highest iteration of that is, can you reproduce that in someone else? And so to do that and to be able to reproduce that in other doctors, to really full time for them and accelerate their growth, has really been a cool experience for me. And that's really kind of what drives me now. It's, we've added practices, and, we're at 5 locations now, and looking at property and other practices to add on. But it's really more about impact. And, we had a free dental day a couple of weeks ago, to be able to do that now in 2 offices, because we had done it 8 or 10 times before the flood and just haven't been able to get back to it. And so,
how much reproduction did you do on that day?
I think it was 86,000 something.
Wow.
So we saw 235 patients. But, to see your staff light up because they're actually getting to use a skill set that they've developed, that you've helped train in them, but they get to use it to actually impact and help other people, and they don't get anything in return. It's just something magical about that. And that's what mission trips are. And so, I've been on mission trips where, you go spend a week, and I've taken my two sons. My daughter's never been, but, both of them have been with me on mission trips. And it just gives you perspective. One of the sayings, my dad, he lived to be 95. He passed away a few years ago, but he would always say, he said, son, we just don't know how to count our blessings. And we really don't, because you can go to a third world country and it doesn't take you but about maybe 30 seconds to figure out how good you have it.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of puts things in perspective too when you have flooding and you lose everything, and that's kind of other people's way of life.
The situation of COVID, and it's not that it wasn't bad. It certainly was bad for everybody, the health issues. But as far as the business aspects of it, and oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I mean, I'm not going to say it was a yawner, but after the flood that we had been through, it was nothing. It's like, 2 weeks? You mean I can't work for 2 weeks? Okay. And it's not that you knew what that was going to be at the end, but certainly it just gives you that perspective that, pretty much whatever's thrown at you, that God's going to equip you to be able to take care of whatever it is. And so to me, it's about how you respond to those things, not so much that you actually have to go through them, but for me, it's what do I need to learn from it? And so one of the things that we're doing, with you guys, CFO, is, how much reserve cash do you have? Because I didn't have a way to pay my staff. Yeah. And I wish I could have, because if I'd had stores to be able to do that, then that's 13, 14 people that you don't lose, that you don't have to rehire, retrain. So it's the amount of investment that you had put into people that you couldn't get back. I think that was the part that was the most devastating for me, because all the equipment, the notes, those go away. You just take on more notes, and it's something that you're paying every month that I'm not really looking at, as long as you can pay your bills. But
I want to go back to something you said several minutes ago. You said the visioning, every year you do the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, whatever, the EOS type of model. Did you envision in that vision, I guess, these offices? You're at 5 now. Did you say like, okay, we're going to buy another one or do a startup, or did some of this just happen due to you grew too fast, capacity?
Initially it was, I had made that 1 year, 3 year, 5 year vision, but that was, at the time, I only had one location. And so it was, you could add another location. You could do these things because you figured out how to run one location. Can you reproduce that in others? We'd gotten our culture where we wanted it to be. We had all the things that you need to be able to have a stable business and a place that people actually want to go to work. And so we had worked really, really hard on that. And I just felt like, and like I said, it was easier for me, the second one, because it was my own kid that I was putting in there, to actually train someone and have them maybe not have been with you very long and be able to trust them in a location that's got your name on it. That would have been a little harder, I think, for me to do, but because it was Andrew, it was my son, it was easy to do. My daughter now does a lot of hygiene administrative stuff. She still sees patients, but she does a lot of the admin because it's 12 hygienists, who's working where, when. It's a lot to keep up with, metrics and training and all of those things. And so, to me, it wasn't, okay, by year 3, I'm going to have 3 locations and then it was just opportunities presented themselves. We were always trying to train leadership. And that's probably one of the biggest aha things, I guess, for me, is you can't grow if you don't have, you can have capacity present itself, but if you haven't developed leaders, if you haven't been working on your people and to develop them internally, then it's like, well, who do I put there? Or if you don't have doctors that have, and so there's this struggle between having enough for all the doctors to feed them, but also cultivating them so that they could move to another place if you get an opportunity, and they could actually take over an office and run an office. So you want to have enough to feed them where they are, but certainly if it was that much, they wouldn't want to leave that location.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to me, it's kind of a tightrope act, because you want them to be as successful as they can possibly be. And really, that's my charge. That's kind of what I commit to them is, I don't want to, if they fail, I fail. And so for me, it's about helping them full time to whatever their dreams are, because the productivity level, you have some, female, male, they get to 60, 70,000 a month. They might be comfortable there.
Right.
If you have people that are doing 150 a month, well, they're like, well, they don't seem like they're working really any harder. How do I do that? And so to be able to train the clinical skills, but then also impart some of the business acumen that you pick up over time, so that at some point in time, if they want to open their own practice, certainly that's I know that on my path. I'm not naive enough to think that they're all going to stay. And so to me, it's just developing people. Whether it's the doctor, whether it's the OMs, whether it's, leadership that are up and coming, it's having that core group around you to be able to develop leaders, because then when an opportunity presents itself, you actually have the potential to be able to take it on and not add, because I don't need another job. I'm not looking for, at my stage in life, I'm not looking for projects necessarily. I love to take a challenge and have a situation that's a value add. It's like, I know I can improve what's going on there. There's opportunities there, and it would be a great opportunity for another dentist, a young dentist, to be able to really spread their wings and learn so much.
Let me ask you one thing real quick, Ed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you'd mentioned metrics, and I think that's one thing I've noticed from you is you and your leadership team are probably the best at having what Jared and I would call like a desert island scorecard, where you can look at one document and get a really good pulse of how your practices are doing portfolio-wide, but also individually and individual doctors. So tell us a little bit about that and kind of how that tracking system developed and how you guys use it.
Yeah, initially, most dentists know probably 3 metrics: production, collection, and new patients. That's all they know.
Yeah.
They might know profitability, but they probably don't, because even for me, profitability was just whatever was left over in the bank.
Yeah.
And you have no idea that, and I talk to practices and look at practices all the time that are bleeding cash every month, and they have no idea, because, when you have to tell somebody, it's like, when you sit down and run the numbers and walk them through the situation and go, you would actually make more money as an associate, because you're actually taking money out of your pocket every month. You're not physically doing that, but in essence, you're taking money out of your pocket, because you're not even making as much as what an associate would make if they were working in that practice. Because as the owner, you can make enough as a dentist to be really comfortable. And I think that's part of the kind of a blessing and a curse in dentistry, is, even Imtiaz Manji years ago told me something that I've never forgotten. He said, dentistry is the best profession on the planet. You literally can get out of school and do everything wrong and still make a good living, because that percentage that you would make it as an associate, if you're an average producer, you could have a great lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a great occupation, but to learn beyond those metrics and go, okay, what makes the business work, and what are the things that I should be measuring? Not just the profitability, but what drives that profitability? Case acceptance of the doctors, and the dollar treatment plan diagnosed, and the diagnostic assertiveness of one doctor compared to the next, and how those all interplay with, oh, well, I need more new patients. Well, actually, no, because this is what the numbers say. And we had some doctors who are doing, per new patient, maybe 3,500, and you're doing 800 per new patient visit. It's just learning the metrics and knowing which buttons to push, which levers to pull to actually get the right response that you want, the right result that you're looking for. And then training the office managers to be able to know those same metrics so that they can run the business from being hands-on in that office. Those are the things that really, the entrepreneurial part of it, the business acumen that you don't learn in school, that they never teach you. And it's, most dentists learn it by hard knocks if they ever learn it, but most of them don't learn it. In my generation, you would be an associate, you would go in and maybe start your own practice. You would practice there for 35 years and you would retire, and you would sell that practice to someone else at 70% of your yearly collections. Yep. And that would be it. But a lot of times you can do that and your business never really was profitable, because if I can't pay a doctor to produce that and take into account what I'm actually having to pay him. But most dentists, mom and pop in the practice, they're not counting, well, I would have to pay myself the same way I would pay an associate.
Right.
So that's actually expense. That's not profit. Just because there's money in your own account, because it's all commingled. And so learning, to me, the metrics of how to, as you said, look at a scorecard and go, is this practice doing okay? Is this practice exceptional? Or is this one really struggling? And where is it struggling? Is it in hygiene? Is it the restorative doctors? Is it, the patient experience suffering? Are you getting reviews? Are you getting referrals? Are you getting all those things that kind of give you some idea that you're treating people the way that you would want to be treated, because they're actually referring their friends and family. It's just all those things that go into it.
Yeah. One thing you said, let's go back to your story here. You get that flagship practice up. Before, you said you were super productive and not profitable, but then you got to where you were profitable. In your experience, going and creating that second practice or third practice, it's easy for somebody to think, hey, I'm just going to replicate what I've done here, right? I'm making money here. It's real profitable. I'm just going to go copy and paste, right? What is the hardest thing to replicate in another practice from that flagship practice that you have? You said it was easy for you because your son was going in to practice number 2, but let's say you don't have that. What's the hardest thing to replicate?
I think like the systems you can put in place. Yep. And if you have the right leadership that's overseeing that, I think those things are certainly they're going to at least keep you from falling off the cliff. But it's hard to replicate your attitude towards patient care. So some of it is hiring. Jared is hiring people correctly on the front end. And look, I sucked at that pretty bad when I was doing it. You get to a certain point when you have office managers that some of them have way better skill sets at that than me. And now I have an HR person that is, 1,000 times better at being able to read people and get good culture fits. So to me, I think the hardest part initially is getting that team around you that buys into your vision. Because look, we all think, oh, I have a vision, I have a mission statement. That's my mission. That's not their mission. They all have a life when they leave here. And so finding people that buy into your mission and are willing to align with you and go down that journey, because they have their own journey. But certainly if it's a win-win situation for them, as far as pay, as far as the environment that they get to work in every day, as far as, to me, giving them, allowing them to kind of soar, allowing them to be creative and allowing them to actually help, like the HR person that we have. It's like, I told her, I don't know anything about HR. So you're going to design this department, this part of our practice. And I'm going to trust you to do it. And we're going to collaborate on it, but I don't know what I'm doing. So essentially you're just getting, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Yeah, it sounds good to me, because I've not done this before. So it's having people that are willing to take that journey with you, and you being willing to not micromanage, especially on stuff that you just don't know anything about. But I think if they have the right heart, the right mindset, that are people like you that align with you. But I wasn't very good at discerning that. I have people around me that are a lot better at discerning that than I am. I'm pretty gullible. They could tell me anything and I would say, oh yeah, that sounds great. But in business, those things don't always work out.
Right.
Yeah, that's one thing I've seen working with you is the mentorship and what you bring to associates, especially concerning your model of bringing in new or folks straight out of school. And now you have the luxury, you're right next to LSU, which really helps. But that was a decision you've made that I think has served you well. Ed, as we start to wrap this up, you had mentioned earlier that Dr. Meese had given you a piece of advice of what he would do differently, which is to not always keep expanding and assuming your existing footprint, expanding, that's the best move. And you open my eyes because you're still pulling from the same patient base. If you were to pay that forward and pass on to our listeners, who are thinking about taking this kind of journey, what you would do different, what would you say from your experience?
I don't know if I would say different, but I would start it earlier. The first 5-10 years in dentistry, you're working on your tool belt. You're trying to you want to be clinically exceptional. And I've not really met many dentists that don't want that. And so, they want to take the implant. They want to, take all the CE. I guess the hardest part for me is you can learn, and you could be the most exceptional dentist on the planet and still have a business that just can't even pay the bills because you don't have any of the other acumen. And to me, what it boils down to is your leadership skills. And it's not something that's taught in school. And so to be able to invest in yourself, not just clinically, but on the professional side. And I think understanding that there's really those two components in a practice, it's because as dentists, you spend all your years, really trying to become a clinician. But if you can invest in becoming and learning some of the professional skills, people skills, conflict management, all the things that go into, we learn it kind of trial and error by fire, when we have employees that act out, or you get some of that along the way when you own your business. But even as an associate, if you desire to do that at some time to actually have a business, you have to learn those skills. And there's not a one place that you go to find out where all that is. And so for me, it's being a part of other groups, people that have done, I don't want to try to reinvent the wheel. Let me get around people that are way ahead of where I am, as far as me envisioning a journey. And so I think, to me, the one thing that I would probably do different is I got coaching pretty early, and a lot of people don't want to spend money on coaching. I mean, that's a given. I don't know how you could, this stuff doesn't just happen automatically. Michael Jordan was extremely gifted athlete, but he still got coaching, and a bunch of them. And the people that I know that are most successful, they might have 3 or 4 different coaches, different areas of their life. And so to me, getting coaching, people that know stuff that you don't, and really working on the professional component alongside the clinical skill, because you have to become you have to be good clinically. That's just, that's kind of that's the foundation. And, for me to be able to mentor younger doctors, if I've not done it myself, it's kind of hard to really mentor somebody else and tell them, oh, this is the way it should be done when you've never done it. And so for me, it's important. That's why I still love clinical dentistry. My challenge is to stay relevant for those doctors that are just getting out of school. And if I hadn't had my hands in somebody's mouth in 5 years, you're still relevant in the professional component, but it's hard to stay relevant in the clinical aspects of it. And so now I have Andrew. I've got a son that's a dentist, and so that helps. But to me, that would be, I guess, probably one of the key components. Coaching, I think, is a given, but coaching in what? And clinical coaching, we all try to get. Coaching in the professional components, how to run a practice, how to be a leader, how to develop leaders, how to grow people. Those are all the things that are the only way that you're going to grow beyond a certain point. And, you've heard it said 1,000 times, and I have too. That person who is, like for me, if I'm the leader at the top, the business is never going to outgrow my leadership capability. Mm-hmm. And so part of what keeps me and drives me and keeps me spending, over 6 figures every year in CE when I'm not learning anything new clinically is I don't want the practice to outgrow my skill set.
Yeah.
I want to remain relevant in some fashion to the practice that I've built. And in order to do that, you have to learn a new skill set. So I gained mastery over dentistry. I was able to reproduce that in somebody else. But now if you're going to take on a CEO role, well, you're back in the 3rd grade. You don't know what you're doing. So now you're a student again. And then you become a technician. You get some proficiency at it, and then hopefully gain some mastery of it over time that you can actually be able to teach someone else. Yeah, those same skill sets.
I mean, you kind of answered my next question already, the best piece of advice. So I'm on a tangent from that question and just go back to the visioning, right? What's the next 1 to 3 to 5 years look like for you, for Hood Dental Care? What's that vision board look like? You're doing it this afternoon, right?
We're still looking to add locations. And for me, it's really about right opportunity, because I've let a lot of them pass. It doesn't fit the buy box, so to speak. But it's not. I'm not an aggregator. I'm not trying to, hey, how many can I roll up? And because for me, there's not really a liquidation event. I'm not saying there won't be, but that's not really something that I'm looking towards, that I'm going to get to this point and I'm going to see, try to cash out, take some chips off the table. It's, this is something that I'm hoping my grandkids will want to be part of, that they'll want to be dentists, or that some of the doctors that work for me now, their kids will want to be dentists and actually work in this organization. So for me, I'm hoping that it lasts long beyond the time that I'm gone. But for us, it's still adding component parts to give other dentists opportunities, to give other office manager opportunities, to actually have, when I say that people that are going to have a pathway of growth here and not get to a point where it's like, okay, well, I've kind of mastered this, but I want something, what's next? Well, it's creating that what's next for them, because if you don't have the opportunities, they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you for what you've built. I mean, I don't know, Bill, you probably agree with this. I don't know if I've heard another dentist, I'll use the analogy, getting kicked in the teeth halfway through with what you went through in 2016. I mean, a lot of people might have been just like, heck with this, man. I mean, but you got right back on that horse, if you will, and kept going, and maybe fueled you more than you had before, to get you to where you are. So kudos for what you've built.
Yeah. I tell my doctors all the time, it's like, as a dentist, the amount of money that you're going to have go through your hands in your lifetime is astronomical. It's not, are you going to make a good living? It's just, what are you going to do with it? Yeah. Are you going to take care of it? Are you going to treat people right? Are you going to do things the right way? And for me, that's really what's important to me. I felt like I was in the slow learning class all the time because I crawled for a long time. And the things that took me 18, 20 years to learn and to be able to do, these dentists are getting out, and with the systems that you put in place and folding time for them, and they're doing those same things in 18 months and 2 years.
Yeah.
And you can imagine the impact that you're having on someone else's career for that length of time that they're not having to struggle with. And to me, that's why I do it. It's really the satisfaction of, I wish I'd have had that opportunity, but I wouldn't change the journey that I've been on either, because it's what makes you who you are. You know, the struggles, if everything was easy, everybody would do it. And so it's the struggles that actually set you apart, and that help create in you that drive. And to me, you in those things, Jared, you have really two choices. You can accept it and go, what can I learn from it? How can I be better? Or you can get better because of it. And man, we've seen those two things happen. And one of them is not pretty. And so, you know, thankfully for me, I'm a faith-based person. I feel like, to me, that those things happen for a reason. And that, you know, there's always those silver linings that come out of it. So to go from really starting over in 2016 and, you know, to where we are this year, we'll do about 13 and a half, somewhere in that range this year. It's beyond my comprehension, beyond anything that I ever look. I'm a country. I grew up barefooted. You know, I'm just a country boy, and I love people. I love to help people, and to me, those things, you know, if you treat people right, and that's your motivation, you know, I just think that the Lord blesses those things. I think those things come back full-fold, and so. It's I wouldn't
you
want
might be a country boy, but you're a hardworking country boy.
That's the work ethic I learned from my parents. You know, they worked hard, but it's still, you know, you see things, and when people get things and they don't have to work for them, they don't last very long.
That's right.
So Ed, it's been a pleasure working with you, man, and watching how you guys operate, watching your team, how you lead, how they respond and react. And so, you know, just really have enjoyed that. But it's also been great talking to you, man. I don't know that in our conversations we've ever really unpacked your journey, and it's a great one, man. So thanks for coming on here. Thanks for spending a little time and sharing some of your great advice, man. We really appreciate it.
Well, like I said, I've appreciated the financial clarity that you guys have given me. That was another system that we didn't really have, like HR. And it's just it's that next component that really we've tried to add to, so that when we do expand even more, that it limits the chaos, and it limits the opportunities to, you know, to make decisions that are going to get you in a bind. Because like I said, you worked hard to get to this point. You want to make sure that you've got good advice from people that you respect going forward to try to help you, keep you on the right path.
That's it. Once you get on the right path, try to stay on the right path. So.
Yeah, it's too hard to get there.
That's right.
You don't
Ed, we appreciate you, man. And heck of a journey, and appreciate you spending some time with us, telling us your story.
Glad to do it.
Thanks, Ed. We'll see you.
All right, guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you.